Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Happy Friday, July 12th, 2024. We're getting started with our usual morning tropical update. It is 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Thank you for taking some time out of your Friday morning to join me for a bit of a tropics talk. And to tell you the truth, the reason I say a bit is there's really not much to say, and I'll tell you the truth, I was low-key stressing out this morning, wondering what will I bring to the table this morning for our tropical update, and to be quite frank, not much. There's really not much to discuss today. I'm still seeing some other mentionings of robust ITCZ, tropical waves, possible development, watching multiple areas. There's nothing to watch right now. There really isn't. There's not much of anything going on out there at all. The Eastern Pacific AOR is quiet. The Western Pacific AOR is quiet. And our Atlantic Basin has shut down just as we were fruitfully anticipating post-Hurricane Beryl. Beryl is no longer on the game board either. If you look at our infrared satellite imagery, Beryl is now way up over in this general area, getting pulled off towards the east by our parent polar front jet, finger of the jet up in through here. And as I mentioned yesterday, I've been seeing some folks mentioning things about this little thing, whatever you want to call it, off the southeast coast. National Hurricane Center, as the thumbnail implies, whoop, that was a dud. Nothing's really going to be happening. So we're dead in the water, folks, to tell you the truth. We really don't have a whole lot to discuss, and I think this satellite imagery does a fantastic job of telling you everything that you need to know. We do have a tropical wave that's making its way through the Lesser Antilles right now with a bit of convection firing closest to our familiar island territories of the Windward Islands. Very familiar with that area thanks to where Beryl tracked earlier in its life cycle. We have some impacts going on for Trinidad, Tobago, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Grenada, and Barbados. We got some thunderstorms and some shower activity moving through there in the wake of that tropical wave, but that's really it. That'd be one of the main things we'd fixate on in this weather briefing, to tell you the truth. Central America has calmed down. We saw a lot of our diurnal intensifying thunderstorm activity in the Southern Caribbean moving through Costa Rica, Panama, and Nicaragua, now getting ready to move into the Eastern Pacific. And I'll show you the National Hurricane Center's East Pac homepage. They are thinking there is a low chance this might try to do something over the next several days, but even those chances are diminishing. And if you look out over the greater MDR just behind my head here, there's nothing out there. Way too much dry air, way too much sinking air, way too much subsidence. So honestly, if you guys are tuning into any other weather sources, I'm not really sure what else they could tell you that I'm not already telling you, because there's really not much happening out there. Just general garden variety activity over the Caribbean, over the Bahamas. We had some increased thunderstorm activity brought on by that area of interest that now has a 0% chance across the board of development. So truthfully, for everybody out there, for us in the United States, not a whole lot going on. The Caribbean, not a whole lot going on. We got some rain coming in with a tropical wave, but this is a very uneventful pattern. Extremely uneventful pattern right now. I wish there was more to talk about, to tell you guys the truth, so I'm going to have to start ab-libbing a little bit over the next couple of weeks. And I know this video is not going to reach a lot of folks. There's not a lot of activity out there on the weather sphere right now. Probably going to go back to our usual viewing numbers, but regardless, I want you guys to do me a favor and check your subscription, because I think YouTube is auditing this page again. Either that or somebody's behind the scenes talking smack about us again, because we'll get some subscribers and then they'll just disappear. We'll get some subscribers and then they'll just disappear. And I don't know if they're going elsewhere. I'd like to think that you guys are hitting that subscribe button and not immediately unsubscribing because the weather isn't busy. That just doesn't make any sense to me. So just double check. It's not the first time this has happened before. Last hurricane season, I had a couple instances where we were building our subscriber base, we were building our channel, we were talking prevalent or current events in the tropics, and the subscribers would go up, and then just like a roller coaster, they would suddenly go down. And I feel like, again, this is the only channel that's happening to. I don't know why. I don't understand what this YouTube curse is all about, but please, just if you wouldn't mind checking your subscription, making sure you're still subscribed, because I know YouTube will do these random audits, especially during a rapid influx of subscribers. They'll think that I'm buying bots or that I'm spamming whatever kind of algorithm out there, and it'll just automatically start removing subscribers. I don't know why, but just a friendly disclaimer. Moving on to our Atlantic 7-day page. So this is not the current page. This is the 7-day page. And you can see here, 48 hours, 0% chance. 7 days, 0% chance. This thing didn't have a shot in its life cycle at all. Shot in heck to develop at all. I'm not really sure why they stamped it to begin with. I was talking to a few folks behind the scenes on X and on Instagram, wondering why they stamped this, and I would very vocally say, I really hope that they don't, but they did, and now they're taking it off the game board. I guess it gave us something little exciting to talk about, and now we can officially say the tropics are closed. They are shut down, and even though we have this little yellow X here, I wouldn't even pay any attention to it. I would pretend that that's not even there. Let me just go ahead and do this. Just pretend that's not even there, because there is no activity for the next 7 days. No action. We are quiet as quiet can be. No action. Closed for business. Everybody who was thinking we were going to be closed before Barrel showed itself, well, you were a little premature in that. Now we are shut down. And before I get anyone asking who may be new to the channel or folks who are just coming across this live stream, after it's all said and done, this is very normal. There's already folks out there who are trying to cancel the hurricane season. Barrel was it. The Atlantic, I had a very crude remark on my TikTok yesterday. The Atlantic, with Barrel, and now it's all done. The hurricane season's finished. And it's like, please do not go telling people that. Do not go around communicating that the hurricane season is over. If you guys remember even last year when we had all the activity during an El Nino, if you recall, most of July was very boring. We had Arlene right at the start of the season. We had Brett and Cindy during June, and then we had Don as we rolled into July, and then there was a long period of latency before Emily showed up, and the next thing you know, we had Franklin, we had Gert, we had Harold, we had Adalia, we had everybody in rapid succession. So if this is going to be another, the Willow in the background, if this is going to be another repeat of an active season, I'm not even going to use the verbiage that they attach to active. I'm not going to use that right now. But if this is shaping up to be a fairly active season, this quiet period here is like a buffer. It's more or less a buffer. We had a Cat 5 out there, and now the tropics are like, all right, let's go ahead and let's go ahead and cool down a little bit. Then we're going to warm back up, and then it's going to be off to the races so we can get started with our marathon. That was a quick sprint to, I guess, test the waters. Here's our Eastern Pacific. We have a 0% chance of formation over the next 48 hours with this disturbance and only a 10% shot over the next 7 days. I believe this was higher yesterday. This, I think, had like a 20-30 or a 10-20 split or something like that as this thing tracked off towards the west-northwest. Possible genesis in this area or development, which is another disclaimer I want to give you guys. If you see these yellow bricks or these yellow blips, as I like to call them, this is not the track. This is where National Hurricane Center is predicting we could see this X turn into an actual tropical cyclone. Is there some kind of track guidance put into it? Yeah, obviously, they're not going to put this big old blob if it's moving up this way. Obviously, it does have a bit of track into it, but what this is indicating is where we will see development, not where it's going. That's a totally separate department, so remember that when you're looking at these future blips, because there are going to be more despite some grievances from the weather and the general viewing public. Folks are thinking that the tropics are over, and that would be the biggest bust in the history of National Hurricane Center, the history of mankind, if we were predicting a 22 to 25 named storm season. We only had 3. So please don't buy into any of the far-fetched stuff, and you also got to be careful of the hype and the excitement. We've had a lot of people for some reason coming on this channel saying we're hyping, and I'm telling you to go the opposite direction. There's going to still be a lot of people out there who are going to either regurgitate the same information. Oh, hyper, look out. It's going to be bad. Please don't pay any mind to them. We're not there yet. We got a nice quiet 2-ish or so weeks ahead of us. Let's just enjoy it. Let's kick back. Let's make sure we are re-prepared for whenever anything. Let's prepare for when the preparation phase does hit again. And let's get ready for August, September, and October, because that's when 2024 is going to show us what it's all about. So just be prepared for that as well, mentally and psychologically, guys. As content creators, I got to admit myself, like as content creators, like I told you at the start of the live stream, it stresses me out when there really is not much to talk about, because I want to keep giving you guys content, but I also don't want to waste your time. I'm not going to sit here and try to make things up or fake things or try to make it sound like, ooh, and I see a lot of channels doing that right now, and I'm not throwing shade. I'm not throwing any kind of hate towards anyone. I'm just saying, like, just shoot straight. If you lose the views, if you lose the subscriptions, that's fine. It's quiet out there right now. If people do want to unsubscribe or stop watching because it's quiet, then so be it. They'll probably come back around when something bad happens. It's sad to say, but it's just the natural ebbing and flowing with the weather. And I'm still coming to terms with that myself. Like I said, just check your subscriptions. The only reason I mention that is because I've seen YouTube take subscribers away before. Even longtime viewers will all of a sudden say, I don't know why I was unsubscribed, but I was. So just kind of maintain your realistic situational awareness and be prepared, because to keep bringing you guys that content. I know a lot of you watch other weather pages outside of my own, and remember, we are content creators at the end of the day. Weather is a science, for sure, but we are on a content creator platform, so people are going to have to kind of come up with some hype-ish things to get you to keep watching, keep sharing, keep liking. And right now, if I'm being totally honest, then we don't got any of that. I'd be lying to you bold-faced if I said, a tropical wave coming in with extreme conditions. Like, no. Look at the satellite and look at this. There's just way too much dry air out there. In fact, it kind of concerns me, because I, low-key, am sitting here like, are we going to come back? Is it going to bounce back from this? Like, there's so many different hypothetical scenarios going on in my mind right now, thinking, okay, could we see another 2022 where we are extremely quiet even into August and people are really voting the season off the island a la Survivor? And then all of a sudden we get that one or two sneaky storms, and that's why I've been emphasizing to you guys since before the hurricane season, I'm not worried about the numbers. I'm worried about impactfulness. We've already seen a far difference in the way our systems are tracking this hurricane season, and the impactfulness is already much greater than it was last year. We've only had 3 storms, and each of these 3 storms have impacted somebody. Put that into perspective, guys. So this is where we are right now. We have a ton of Saharan dust out there. It's kind of bizarre that we're not seeing this shading here extending all the way through to the Gulf and through the rest of the Caribbean, because let me tell you, you can tell that there's a lot of Saharan dust out there. The dust layer, I believe, extends beyond the Atlantic, even further off towards the west, because we are seeing it here in Florida. We're seeing it through the Cayman Islands, the Yucatan, even other areas along the Gulf Coast are seeing some of the dust. So don't make it seem like, oh yeah, we have dust out here, but this area is still ripe for act. No, we have a lot of dry, dusty air. We have a unfavorable upper level pattern. We are in as bad of a MJO, a Kelvin wave, whatever you want to put on the table, a Rossby wave pattern as we possibly could be. There's not going to be anything happening. But I will go ahead and reel you back in just a little bit. Remember, I told you by the time we get to July 15th-ish, we're going to start seeing signals. Well, the signals are slowly but surely coming. So rock with me. If you're thinking about exiting the live stream because I've been just talking smack, please don't. I got some information to pass along to you, and we'll get there. This is a look at our microwave imagery right here. So what this is doing basically is showing us a precipitable water / almost like a reflectivity or a radar image of what the Atlantic looks like. You can see the satellite over Africa. We still have some decent MCSs, easterly waves moving across the Africa continent right now. We have 3 lined up, possibly 4 right in through here that are getting ready to exit the west coast. But because of all that dry air, they're really not going to be able to do too much. We have that tropical wave right in through here we saw on satellite moving into the Lesser Antilles. Our disturbance off the southeast, that's extremely stretched out at this point thanks to the upper low and the trough moving in with the front that passed through us yesterday. That thing's not going to have a fighting chance. And that pretty much sums the picture up, at least in the short term. So this is a look at the Caribbean. We will go ahead and look at you guys just because I don't want to forget about you. We do still have some rainy activity, and as these tropical waves come across, the greatest impact you're probably going to realize is a lot of mechanical thunderstorms, or in other terms, terrain-produced thunderstorms. So with these tropical waves, obviously they bring a little bit of vorticity, they bring a little bit of energy in the atmosphere, and a little bit of an increase in your humidity and your moisture. moisture. So what's going to end up happening, and if you look, the European model does a fantastic job of showing this. If you look over much of the Caribbean, there's a lot of white, which would indicate our precip values, our moisture values are fairly low. But if you look at all the islands are almost bathed in that green color. Because what's happening here is as those tropical waves come through, they're simply injecting a little bit more moisture into the instability that's already present in the atmosphere. Because remember, since we don't have any clouds, since we don't have anything to keep us shielded from a lot of that short wave or that UV radiation coming in, we are going to get our daytime instability just like we would see here in the United States. And those mountains, they act like ramps for this moisture coming in to shoot up and create thunderstorms immediately. So no spectacular impacts, but we are going to keep our rain chances fairly elevated over the next several days. And you can see kind of faint glimpses of where our tropical waves are. Here's our wave here, tracking up through there. And if you go further in time, there goes another wave right there, tracking up right here, this wave here, tracking up through there. And that's one small tidbit, one small breadcrumb I want to give to you guys. So I know I started this live stream, the first 10, 15 minutes of this live stream saying there ain't much to talk about. Well, that's because in the immediate future, there isn't anything pressing. But in terms of what I've been doing in terms of research and very careful analysis and all the note-taking I have behind me, there's a lot of things that I'm not really liking about our pattern as we start to approach when we get that active period of time. So if you notice, what's the key takeaway here that I've been showing you guys? We had one wave that's moving in like this. We have another wave that's moving in like this. Where are my arrows doing? And I'll go ahead and kind of go Weather Center classroom for a second and wait for somebody in the chat to tell me. What's something we've been discussing on this channel even during Barrel's lifetime that I'm going to be watching for as we go, especially into August? What are my arrows doing as I track these tropical waves? Somebody in the chat, please spit it out. Spit it out. I'm going to take a sip of coffee and I'll wait for somebody to drop it in the chat. We have a tiny group in here. Lorenzo, you're on to something. You're on to something, Lorenzo. I wonder if those tropical wave tracks signal what tracks could be in the future. So Lorenzo is getting there. We're about like 75% of the way there, Lorenzo. I need somebody else. We have a very tiny group in here right now, so we're going Weather Center classroom at this point. What are my arrows doing here? And think back, there we go, Alfalfa Bill Enjoyer, thank you. So not necessarily headed towards Florida specifically, but if you guys recall, and I'll go back to the large scale here, I'll go back to the large image. Remember I had mentioned to you guys, particularly in August, I have a very strong feeling we're going to see our waves stop doing this, and they're going to start doing something like this. And if you notice, looking at the progression of our tropical waves, just the waves themselves, we're already seeing that. If you track that first one moving through the Antilles right now, look at where all that rainfall ends up. The rainfall ends up right here. So there's your first tropical wave, and then watch this. If you go all the way towards the very tail end of the run, watch that next tropical wave right there. Right here. Look at where it's generally tracking. So we're already starting to kind of see that nudge in the tracks from far off towards the west to a bit more west-northwest, and that's the problem that I'm seeing, and that's what I'm a little more concerned about, and it goes beyond that as well. If I switch over, as a matter of fact, I'll show you the GFS, as a matter of fact, is a little bit more reinforcement just to kill a bit of time. And I'll show you the vorticity so we can track them a little bit easier. So there's our first tropical wave moving through, and look at where the vorticity ends up. It's obviously weak. It's obviously very weak. It's not going to form. We're in a very bad spot right now, but look at where the vorticity ends up of our tropical wave. Massive difference already compared to where all of our other tropical waves were. So unfortunately, we're already seeing that nudge more towards the northwest as opposed to west-northwest. If you remember, Alberto, even Beryl, and Chris all formed or passed through this general area and affected the West Gulf Coast. And now we're starting to see indications that we're already starting to see a weakness along our east coast. That ridge is pushing back just a little bit, and we're starting to see a bit more of that west-northwest movement. If you take a look at the next one, here comes our next one, very weak. Remember, guys, these are very weak waves, so we're not going to be able to see them very well. You have to track them as best you can. Look at where that wave ends up. Look at the wave. Here. We started out here. Leeward Islands, Greater Antilles, and are moving up. There's where your wave went. We started here, wave tracked through, wave tracked through. We're following our Bermuda high. We're going right up and around like this. We're going right up and around. That's why I've been saying, and we're already starting to see it. That's why for the longest time, even though it sounds like I've been blasting it to you ad nauseum, like I love to refer back to, we're going to see a switch from here. We're going to start seeing more of this. And we are starting to slowly but surely see the machinations of that. If you come over to our tropical probabilities, this is a probability of development and a strike of a tropical feature altogether, all-encompassing. This is the middle of the month towards the 22nd. You go to the time frame, the 22nd through the 29th. Look at that. You go to the 29th to August 5th. Look at that. You go from the 5th of August to the 12th of August, that fateful Hurricane Charlie anniversary. And I'm telling you guys, I have not been looking at this. Sometimes I think that before people do their live streams or they do their discussions, they look at the charts and then they act a little surprised when they pull it up. No, I'm not acting surprised right now. I'm actually like, whoa, okay, so what I'm saying is making sense. What I'm saying, the models are actually picking up on. And if you look, general takeaway here is we're seeing a lot of our more prevalent signals right there, not in the Gulf anymore. Not in the Gulf. We're seeing the East Pac. We're not. Notice, guy. I'm going to see if I can go back in time, as a matter of fact. Let's go. Excellent. Let's go back to July 3rd. And let's go all the way back to the beginning of the run. See that? See the difference there? June through July, we have that dominating ridge, pushing, just bullying everything towards the west. I just got chills right now because the models here are literally showing exactly what I've been trying to communicate to you guys, and it's humbling. But at the same time, it's a little, whoa, okay, so if that's the case and I'm already getting this stuff kind of painted out for you guys, I can only imagine what happens when the real systems start to show up on our radar. There go the chills down the back of my neck once again. So this is a very old model chart right here. This is valid for the very beginning of July, between the 3rd and the 5th, the 8th through the 15th. And if you notice, all of our activity was pushed way to the west, Now, if I go back to our most recent run on July 11th, and you switch the clock and you go to the very tail end of July, you fast forward a month, just like we had been talking about, us as a group, you go to the end of the month, massive shift towards the west-northwest. Mid-Atlantic, some of the Northeast, and particularly the Bahamas and the state of Florida are really going to have to wake up, and we're going to have to wake up fast if you aren't paying attention. That's why I'm saying there's not much to talk about right now, and that's okay because I have a dark feeling we're going to have plenty to discuss as we get closer in time. And again, if you want to use your context clues, what this would indicate is our ridge of high pressure that was out over the Atlantic went from this to this. We're starting to see that eastward migration. And that's going to prove lethal for our lesser and greater Antilles. It could probably bring some situations up towards the Bahamas. Florida, I'm telling you, my gut is basically screaming at me right now that Florida's going to see something in August. The Mid-Atlantic coastline is going to have to start looking up. One Nation Weather, I'm looking at you, buddy. The Carolinas are going to have to start paying close attention because I do think because we will be in that Enzo neutral, that is where we're going to have to watch. And I've been doing more calculations and more research. So I went ahead and I went through a lot of our archives out there for the Enzo Oscillation Index, the ONI Index, and I wrote down literally every single neutral hurricane season that we have on record. Every single neutral season. From 1960 all the way up to 2017, 2019, and 2020 started off as a neutral and then very quickly transitioned to that La Nina. And I haven't done the percentages or the ratios on this yet because obviously that's a lot of data that I wrote down yesterday. But the key takeaway here is I want to say 6 out of 10, 6/10 of the time you're looking at increased Florida landfalls and increased situations or scenarios where our systems are tracking through the greater Antilles, whether it be just to the immediate south, kind of like what Beryl did, or to the immediate north, where they're just barely passing to the north of Puerto Rico, Hispaniola, Cuba, the Bahamas, and they're either making a run for the southeast or they're making a run for the mid-Atlantic coastline. So we have to start paying attention. You can see it here on our tropical genesis probabilities. It's right there. It's staring us all in the face. Very big difference. Massive difference in our trends now. We're seeing that steering pattern readjusting, and instead of being bullied all the way towards the west, we're seeing them start to take a bit more of a west-northwest path. Now, obviously, until we have an actual cyclone on the board, we won't know if it'll end up going up like this. We won't know if it'll end up going up like this. We don't know if it'll end up kind of splitting the difference and going up like this. But the key takeaway here is, like I've been trying to emphasize, this is where I do believe our primary general track trend is going to be as we go through the tail of this month and work our way through the month of August, and then September is probably going to be a mixed bag of just everything. If you come over to our probabilities, the probabilities are slowly but surely showing our signals as well. I've been mentioning again, and I feel bad constantly going again and again and again saying I've been mentioning, but I just want to re-emphasize to people who may be not watching, who may have stopped watching, and I'm going to say it again and again because I know a lot of folks are going to tune out right now. We went from having almost 2,000 viewers in our live streams down to 95. So there's a lot of people who are not paying attention right now. And that's not a good sign because there's other people who are very convinced that the hurricane season is over and we're going to be in for a very rude awakening. We've been mentioning on our channel together collectively as a group, guys, that the time frame to start to monitor for signals was going to be July 10th through July 20th. Particularly as we hit next Monday, the 15th, we're going to start to see more breadcrumbs, more whispers, and more hints that development may be on the horizon. And as of 0Z this morning, and even 12Z yesterday, I'll show you 12Z yesterday. We didn't meet yesterday, but if you look at the probabilities from yesterday, whenever this decides to load, there we go, and you take them through time, we're starting to see our MDR signal coming back. 0Z today definitely showed a bit more of an intense signal, moving right on in. If you go back to 0Z yesterday, it echoed these same sentiments. So it's been more or less a very weak but soft trend over the last 24 to 36 hours now. Whenever this decides to load up, there we go. You can see it right there, coming out of the Atlantic and moving up, getting ready to hook up. So as a disclaimer and as CYA for myself, before you guys take to the comments, not you literally watching, you know what I mean, you know who you are, always trying to cause ruckus. I'm not highlighting an imminent impact. I'm not highlighting anything on the immediate horizon, nor am I trying to get anybody excited that something is coming over the next week, 2 weeks, etc. No. Right now, what I'm doing as your forecaster is showing you the breadcrumbs and the trends, the signals, the signs, the hints, whatever you want to put on the table as you describe it, the little nudges from our models to paint a more accurate picture for the long-term future. That's all I'm doing. I've been mentioning that the signals were going to start to populate once again as we get towards the middle and latter half of July, and we're starting to see them sneaking onto the radar. And right now, because we're so quiet, no one's really paying them any mind. I still think that as forecasters, and especially content creator forecasters, we should be paying attention to these signals just as rigorously as we would if there was a named system on the board, because that's what a lot of people stopped doing with Beryl, and then look what happened. Everybody was like, yeah, we're done, we're good, there's nothing out there, very small signals, and the next thing you know, Category 5 in the Caribbean. So one of the lessons learned is even though I'm not actively talking to you guys every day, even though there aren't any blips on National Hurricane Center, we don't have a named storm out there, I'm still out here taking a ton of notes, still studying, still researching, and still forecasting and working day to day on when it is I do think we're going to have to start firing up on all cylinders and get back to doing our dual live streams, our routine coverage, and getting the word out on what's coming. If you come over to the ensembles are really not showing too much, the individual cyclone members, but you can see as we go beyond the back end of July, we're slowly but surely starting to get more and more random members popping off some kind of activity here. And the only reason I bring this up is because that means that there are players on the board somewhere in between this time frame that could possibly try to do something. Maybe not in this time frame, maybe beyond the 27th of July and possibly even into August. We may not see any yellow blips on the board for July, but versed into the beginning of August is when we're going to start to have to open our eyes again and start paying close attention. Same thing with the GFS. We're not seeing too many individual members out there, but regardless, there are some signs that we are going to continue to have our tropical waves coming off. And then it's only a matter of time before the upper levels reopen and we start to get more of that favorable environment conducive for development. We wash out the dust. We wash out all our shear. We get rid of the tut. The tut that's been positioned here is likely to start going away as we get towards the extreme back end of July. We're talking the last couple of days and into August, and we're going to start to see these spaghetti plots getting a little more busy. Mick, thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. Extreme Weather Chaser Theo, thank you for joining us. So you're basically saying all storms, or most of them, are going to Florida or the North Carolina, not the Gulf. So no, Roxanne, I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is our general steering is going to try to put our storms anywhere into this general area, I do believe. That is going to be our general steering. Now, obviously, it's going to be taken case by case with these individual storms. We don't have anything on the game board right now. There's no action to be talked about. There are no finite track models or variables to discuss, so we can't really break those down because obviously they're going to change. But this is going to be what I think is the general trend. They're going to want to go in this direction. Obviously, we're going to have different changes and fluctuations in our ridging. We'll have fronts and troughs coming off the United States. We'll have weaker systems out there that may want to track more to the west. We'll have stronger systems that may try to escape up towards the northwest or the northeast. So this is more or less my generalized long-term guidance without us having any storms out there. When the storms come in, we're probably going to see the same thing we saw with Barrow, where our ensembles are going all the way over here and our ensembles are going all the way over here until we get closer in time. But generally speaking, based on what I've been looking at and the patterns in the large scale, what they're showing, I think this is going to be our general attempt at tracking these storms. We're probably going to see them continue to move towards the Lesser Antilles. Whether they make it up above them or through them remains to be seen. We'll have to wait until we actually have something on the board. The Greater Antilles, the Bahamas, the Southeast. The Southeast does include parts of Mississippi, and especially Alabama, Georgia, and the Carolinas. I'm not just looking at Florida by itself. I'm not just saying Florida alone. There's a lot of people who still need to be paying attention, and we also have to remember we're not only going to get development out here. We could see these weaker waves make their way into the Caribbean, and remember what I've been trying to say, you guys. The Caribbean, anytime there's a tropical feature in the Caribbean, everybody needs to be paying attention because that thing can go any which way it wants. So don't go out there, don't go click and unsubscribe because, oh yeah, Weather Center's saying that Florida's going to get hit and that's it. He's saying the Carolinas are going to get hit and that's it. No, don't manipulate my words. Don't do the whole wordplay thing like some people have done in the past. What I'm saying is our general steering, not the storms themselves, the general steering, like the highs and the lows, the troughs, the ridges, are likely going to give us a scenario like this. Does that mean our storms are specifically all going to track that way? Absolutely not. We can't forecast that until there's something on the board, and we saw how that went with Beryl. A lot of people are saying Mexico, and then all of a sudden Louisiana, and then it ended up being Texas. And this cannot also be, we can't rule out and forget that we are likely going to see more formation in the Caribbean, and we could potentially see intensification or formation in the Gulf. And always keep in your back pocket that whenever there is something in the Caribbean, or especially in the Gulf, everybody needs to be paying attention, regardless. I don't care what the ensembles say. I don't care what your favorite weather page says. I don't care what this person says. I don't care what that person says. A general rule of thumb for you, anytime there's something here or there's something here, everybody needs to be paying attention. If you want to be that special individual who says, the ensembles are saying Texas and I'm in Florida, I don't care, who cares? That's of your own accord. But my rule of thumb to keep in your back pocket is anytime there's something inside of a generally landlocked area like the Gulf of Mexico or the Caribbean where there's land on all sides, everybody needs to be paying attention. And that's another thing. So, Sean, to tell you the truth, I don't see Debbie in the next 2 weeks. Debbie is probably going to, we're going to have to wait for our next named storm. We're looking at probably, if I'm being realistic, the next named storm on the chart will probably more than likely be early August. Is there a shot we get something as we go through the very tail end of this month? Like we're talking the 25th through to the last day of July. We might have a blip. We may have a blip on there, a yellow X or a yellow shade, yeah, but do I think Debbie is coming in the month of July? It would take a very special circumstance to get Debbie out there, truthfully. It's July 12th. We're almost to the middle way of the month. Do I see Debbie coming before July ends? Right now, no, I don't. I don't see that happening. But we do have some signals, so obviously I'm going to continue to gravitate towards those signals and watch what our upper and low levels do. Obviously, we know the water's ready. The ocean heat energy is ready. The dust is not helping our case. The MJO is not helping our case, and we don't have any Kelvin waves or any kind of major subtropical highs or anticyclones coming in anytime soon to stir the pot. So I don't see Debbie happening over the next 2 weeks. Beyond 2 weeks, it's very tough to say. We could see a yellow blip end of July, but realistically speaking, based on all the data we have right now, it'll probably be beginning of August when we get our next full named storm. And that's honestly it, guys. That's pretty much all I have for you. I know we talked a little bit more about the trends than I would have liked to. I know I took up a little bit more time, but that's about it. I was looking at the CFS to see what the CFS is thinking. CFS shows that we're going to have a bit of a mixed bag going in between here, it looks like. But we'll wait and see. We will wait and see. There's only preliminary signs right now. Does anyone have any questions for me in the chat before we wrap up? Yeah, April, they're probably going to be that way until things hit the fan again. And that's kind of a bummer, I don't say this negatively, but ignorance is for sure bliss. I can't tell you how many people were commenting on everyone's social medias, not just mine, but there were so many people who were more or less like, who cares, dude? You're talking about a storm that doesn't affect me. And it's like, okay, that doesn't affect you. Tell me you're ignorant without actually telling me you're ignorant, because the storm is still affecting people. You're not the only person on this planet. So you should definitely take advantage of the sales that are going on right now. There's a lot of back-to-school stuff going on, so they're going to have really good discounts on a number of different school supplies and other household and school, or not school household, but they're going to have things like sanitizer, first aid. Obviously, I've seen water out there, the energy drinks, the hydration packs, things that students would typically prepare for long school weeks. You can still kind of spin those in a way for tropical preparation. And we can talk more about that on another live stream, if anything. But definitely, I would say take advantage right now while you can. Because at the end of the day, going back to what we talked about in terms of math, but we're still, all of our big leagues out there, all of our big wigs, NOAA, National Hurricane Center, CSU, are thinking we're in for another 22 named storms. And if you go back to the math we did the other day, 22 named storms at a ratio of 2 every 3, or 2-3, that would mean that if we had 22 named storms, about 9 to 11 of those storms are making landfall somewhere. And again, if you look at the ratios that we calculated the other day, even if we say we have an average season and we have another 10 or 11 named storms, that means more than likely 5 or 6 of those are going to be making landfall somewhere. This is not a pattern to where everything's going to be out to sea. This is not a pattern to where we're not going to have development on our back doors or on our front doors in the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico. So just keep that in mind. Mathematically speaking, based on the numbers that we crunched the other day on Wednesday, if you were able to tune in for our live stream, if we're forecasting another 22 named storms, somebody is getting hit. In the Caribbean, along the East Coast, again along the Gulf Coast. We've already had one hit the Gulf Coast of the United States head on. Beryl. We've had 2 other storms hit the Gulf Coast into Mexico. It's not very far off until these systems start jogging this way, and then the rest of the Gulf Coast and the rest of the eastern United States become an issue. So that's that. Do with it as you please. Your thoughts on Beryl being a possible Cat 2 when she made landfall? So Trippy Hippie, I've been seeing a lot of people debating that, but there's really no debating it. The only reason why it hit harder than what a traditional Cat 1 hurricane would feel like is because of all of its overall inertia, its momentum, its energy that it was building up. It was building up as it was trying to re-intensify. You guys can't only look at it at a wind speed and a pressure perspective. You have to look at it at the general physics. That's like if I were to run towards you full force and start to slow down as I got closer to you. And if I were to tackle you as I'm slowing down, obviously you're probably going to move, but you're not going to fall over. If I start out at a slow jog and then I get closer to you and I decide to speed up and tackle you at my full speed, you're going to fall back. But the key takeaway here is with the hurricane itself, there's folks saying it was a Cat 2, Cat 3. The readings and the data disprove that. It was not a Cat 2, not a Cat 3. It was a Cat 1, but it was building that internal inertia, that internal momentum to strengthen into a Cat 2 and possibly a Category 3 if it had another 12 to 18 hours over water. So that's another thing you have to take into the equation. Even though it's a Cat 1, if it's a strengthening storm system, that means inside of it, it's getting stronger, it's powering up. So obviously it's going to take a little bit longer to weaken down. Yep, I've been looking at that. Trust me. CFS is definitely picking up on an uptick in circulations as we get towards end of July and into early August. Beryl will likely be retired. I think it'll be retired. I think at this point it's more or less kind of a given. The fact that it broke as many records as it did, caused tremendous amounts of damage everywhere that it went. So, Trippy Hippie, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. I'm starting to get better at that, trying to stay away from the science and just explain it like an ordinary person. Not like you're 5. Not like you're 5, just trying to make it, lose the sophisticated jargon. Some folks have said in the past on this channel, you think you know what you're talking about because you use big words. And it's like, well, I can still explain it to you without using all the big words. And it's the same concept with these hurricanes. They're their own internal combustion engine like our cars have. If you increase the horsepower of your car, it's going to go faster. If you decrease the horsepower of your car or you have a hybrid vehicle, it's not going to go as fast, but it'll last longer. The same thing with our major hurricanes. If you have a high horsepower build, it's only going to last so many runs down the track before something else breaks, and then it's going to fall apart. Twilight Firefly 100, you are very welcome. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, our small, intimate crowd today. I really do appreciate it. As anticipated, folks are going to be turning us off during this quiet period of weather, and that's okay. I'm stressed. I'm very consistently stressed, but it kind of takes the stress off of me just a little bit because I know not many people are watching, so we can be a bit more casual in our live streams and not have to worry about people hazing or throwing flack or issues popping up in the chat. So that is one piece of the puzzle that I'm glad about. But it's not going to take very long before we start to see things coming at us again. And like I said, to break it down, we will more than likely have development in our Caribbean. We will more than likely see a general trend with these systems trying to move more west, and then it becomes a question of how much more to the north do they go or how much further to the west do they go. And For my folks out there, if you're watching or not who want to cancel this hurricane season, shame on you, because you're setting up your friends and your loved ones and even your coworkers and peers for failure. You're setting them up for failure, and that's not good. Because again, we are forecasting 22 more named storms. Even if that forecast is a bust and we only get half of that, that is still 11 more storms coming at us. Still 9 to 11 more, and if you look at the ratios in comparison to an El Nino, a neutral, or a La Nina pattern, the ratio for them being impactful is much higher. So even if we have 6 more named storms, the likelihood of 2 or 3 of them hitting someone is very high. During an El Nino, much lower, because everything in the atmosphere changes. But the fact that we are in a cool neutral headed towards a La Nina, that tells me that we are looking at the greater possibilities of any storm that happens being a lot more impactful. The chances of it being a fish storm or a hype storm, as I like to call it, are much lower. Remember, a 2 out of 3 ratio that's during a cool to a La Nina season, a 1 in 5, 1 in 6 ratio for El Nino. And El Nino is out of the picture. Our currents and our oscillations out there in the Atlantic are far more conducive for westward tracking systems, so it's only a matter of time. If you don't really care about the numbers, just remember the math, remember the ratios, remember the percentages, remember the odds that even if we had 3 storms, one of those storms is going to hit somebody. That's just the odds, the mathematical odds. So thank you all very much for watching. Lorenzo Jefferson, thanks for all you do. I'm reviewing my kit now in Florida with more people moving here. Getting supplies will be difficult. Yes, Lorenzo, I entirely agree. And Lorenzo, another piece of that puzzle that I'm a little concerned about is when these systems do start moving towards the islands, I'm almost willing to guarantee that they're going to evacuate in our direction, which is going to make it even more chaotic when it comes time to hit the bricks and go get things together and prepare at the last second. 90%, like they say about us military members, we're the 1% of the 99 out in the United States who actually raise their right hand and join the military. I can honestly use that same sort of a metaphor or analogy for the tropics. 1% of the population tend to keep their situational awareness about them. That's you guys who are here watching right now. 1% of the general population will continue to watch and remain vigilant throughout the season, regardless. The other 98 to 99% of the people, especially in the U.S., I know you guys in the Caribbean take it a lot more serious. You guys, I know I respect you guys, and I respect your work ethic and your grind staying ahead of the storms. But especially us here in the United States, a lot of us U.S. folk, we're ignorant. We're kind of not going to use verbiage, but and they're going to wait until the very tail end, the very last second, just like with COVID and like with every other hurricane season, every other impact. It's going to be mass hysteria if something big were to hit Florida, or anywhere for that matter. I still remember videos and TikTok posts and other Instagram shorts of what was happening before Ian hit, and it was just utter chaos. It got to the point where stores were having to regulate the amount of supplies they can give to people, and that in of itself is dangerous. But the problem is we make it dangerous. We make the stores have to do that. That's because we want to wait till the last second. You could very easily prep over time, and I honestly would recommend during this slow period you do that. Next time, we all usually go to the grocery store 1 to 2 times a week, if not 1 or 2 times every other week. So what I would encourage you to do is slowly but surely just kind of start putting your prep together. No reason to go out there and just try to buy everything all at once. No, not when we have 2 solid 3 weeks of nothing happening. Take your time, pace yourself. Every payday, be like, okay, I'm gonna take $50, go get an extra case of water, go get some batteries, go get some candles, maybe some electric lanterns or things along those lines. Maybe check over my first aid kit, get some extra Band-Aids, some extra alcohol, things like that. You don't have to go and hoard the store all at once. And then next payday, okay, I'm going to get an extra case of water just for the fun of it. Maybe I'll have a barbecue. Maybe we'll go out and do something. We'll use a couple, but I'll still have extra. And then the next payday, before things start getting busy again, go and get your last little bit of incidental stuff to pack it into your overall preparedness kit. This way you're not over here trying to buy 5 cases of water at once and then the store's looking at you like, what are you doing? So here is the European seasonal outlook. I see somebody in the chat mentioning it again and again and again. And here is our precip anomaly. You can see that July is fairly consistent with our fronts, fairly consistent with our trough off the East Coast, and then activity trying to get its act going in the Caribbean. And then August, all bets are off. We have a much more clear path towards the east and the southeast. Same thing with September. September is a mixed bag, but I will tell you the truth. I'm seeing this out to sea signature here, which would be ebbing and flowing of our ridge. But one thing that's different about the latest guidance is all this. The latest European guidance keeps precip anomalies very elevated, even into October. So I don't know how I feel about that. That's not a pleasant sign. Because all through the hurricane season, we've been seeing that through August, things were going to get busy. And then September, October, it becomes a lot more of a mixed bag. But the fact that the European, as of late, this is our July outlook, the European model and the NMME are showing that the southeast are going to see even more activity up until the La Nina winter can hit. That kind of concerns me. That's definitely something that concerns me. That's something different. If I come over to our... And I really should be getting ready for work now, but I'm going to show you guys, I'm going to take you through the trends here, just so we can all look at it together and you guys will know that I'm not out to lunch. Long range, I need extended range. And we're coming to this website so I can actually go back in time and show you the differences and show you the trends. Because I have noticed that, let me go long months, and where is our precipitation? Here we go. And then I can change the AOI. So let's see, this is global. Let's go to the tropics. Let's see if we can go a little closer. Let's go North America. Is that going to help us? Kind of. We'll go back to the tropics. We'll go to the tropics. All right, so if we go back to January, we go way back to January, and we look at the forecast for later into the season, you notice that we are starting to see our rainfall totals picking up. If you go to March, and you go all the way into the hurricane season to July, you can see that our anomalies, our precip anomalies, stay particularly into the Caribbean. They don't really go anywhere. You go to April, and we can finally start to see what the hurricane season looks like. Then this is valid for August. You can see that there are some precip anomalies, particularly hugging the west and southern corners of the Caribbean, with a bit of an indication that the Gulf of Mexico, particularly the southeast, could see some above-average anomalies. You go to the May outlook, and this way we can see into September now. And if you notice, back in May, in September, see that? See how the anomalies had changed? In September of 2024, we were looking at a big concentration of either out-to-sea activity or just in the Caribbean, but there really were no anomalous values for the Gulf or the Southeast. You go forward to June, and you keep the same valid time for September. Again, see that? Very anomalous activity out over the greater Atlantic, indicating that we're going to have ebbing and flowing on our ridge, systems escaping out to sea, some making it into the Caribbean, but still no anomalous activity for the United States. And then you go to July, and there has been a sudden change, and now look at the difference. Now we have a bit more of a realistic outlook in terms of our precip values, but the precip values continue all the way into the United States. And I think part of this has to do with the fact that our latest seasonal outlooks across all of our models are delaying La Nina. So it's very, very interesting that we're seeing a bit of a change in our overall pattern. And I wish that this model would have... Where did it go? Did I lose it? Oh, yeah, I reopened it on a different page. I really wish that this model here, this overlay, would allow me to go back and forth to show you previous model runs, but it won't let me do that. Because I would love to show you guys how all of a sudden the Atlantic signature, particularly in the precip, is different. This is our 3-month average for August, September, and October. And if you look, there are some signals of out-to-sea systems. We're definitely going to see some. There's going to be some that don't hit anybody. But then look at this very anomalous area of precipitation out through here. That's different. That's very different. So we're going to have to keep it. We get this on a month-to-month basis. So unfortunately, the next time we get an update from our seasonal models is going to be as we're wandering into the minefield of peak hurricane season. That's the only problem. This is probably our last outlook that we can use to where we're still looking ahead. We're not looking at the immediate, okay, this is happening tomorrow now. So, unfortunately, we're not going to get another update from our Euro or any of our Climo models, the CanSIPs. The CFS weeklies will still be there, but I don't really like the CFS weeklies. There's a lot of variability in those models, or in that model particularly, so I'm not a really big fan of using those. That's why I never really pull up our CFS weeklies for anything outside of maybe just the general wind flow and the general shear consistency out there, but that's honestly, without sounding too alarming or concerning, I'm not going to say the H word, without sounding too whoa, I don't like the fact that our latest indications show that it could be an even more impactful season for our folks that matter. Because like I just showed you guys, going back in time with our Euro charts on their actual website, that was the ECMWF website, I took you guys all the way back to the start of the year, and we were consistently showing that July and August, we could see some sporty activity for the Caribbean and the United States. Now, all of a sudden, with this latest update delaying the La Nina, if I go back to our monthly images, where did it go? Why did it disappear? There we go. This has been there for a while now. I can show you guys on my Instagram and on my X and on my other platforms that the August signal has not changed. August, I personally do believe, is going to be Florida's turn. I'm not backing down from that. And if I'm wrong, I'm willing to take that one on the chin and learn from it, but truthfully, my long-term forecast from like January is August is going to be Florida's month. Where the difference is made is in September and in October. This is totally different. This September indication brought the precip back for Florida and the mid-Atlantic, but especially October. And I really do think this has to do with the fact that we're delaying our La Nina. Like I'd mentioned in a couple of TikTok posts ago and on a few other live streams over the last couple of weeks, the implications that our ENSO has on the season is, I think, a bit undersold to the general public. I don't think a lot of our big weather sources, I don't think a lot of our big channels out there really emphasize what our ENSO does to the globe and what the ENSO does to all of our tropical seasons. And we're seeing it. The reason we were off to a slow start is because we're not moving into a La Nina that fast. We were banking on that, and that didn't happen. It's been proven through the years, all the way back from 1960, it's been proven that usually as we come down from a strong El Nino, the atmosphere on a global scale has to kind of calm down a little bit and reset. We go back to a neutral pattern, just like the name implies. We go from El Nino bias to the hot conditions off to the west, and then we come back to neutral. We come back to an average playing field. And I think the fact that if I switch over to our global view here and we go to the SST anomalies, you can see that our La Nina is very heavily delayed. In fact, the Euro does not think we're going to go into a La Nina almost at all. We'll be at a very cool cool neutral, weak La Nina all the way through. And if we switch over to the NMME on here, one of our more later climatological models, Climo models, and we switch over to our SST anomaly, this is the GFS, I want the NMME, there we go. We switch over to our anomaly, and you can see that we're not really expecting a strong La Nina, well, not strong, but a pronounced La Nina takeover until we're well into the fall. And if I switch back over to the North Atlantic, we are ebbing and flowing very well with what the European model is thinking. There's July, there's August, there's September, there's October, and then November, and this makes a lot of sense. As La Nina tries to creep in, we're going to see our precip values falling for the south and southeast because that's typically what fall and especially winter looks like with La Nina. It's not like El Nino. This winter is going to be a night and day difference, very difference. Olivia, thank you very much for that. That actually means a lot. I really appreciate it. And no, I don't think, and to tell you the truth, I mean, we have a lot of Floridians in here, but I think a lot of the Caribbean folks and along the Gulf Coast watch as well. And maybe the reason we're dropping subscribers right now is because we had a period of time where we were focusing on United States winter weather, United States severe weather, and now we're out into the tropics, and I bet a lot of people are probably turned off by that. Maybe, I don't know. I'm just kind of spitballing. But there you have it, guys. You know, our latest European outlook specifically is going to be very interesting. Very interesting indeed, and I'm going to have to continue to do a lot of research and a lot of note-taking. These are honestly, to show you guys, these are the notes I've taken over the last couple of days now. So this is one page in my notebook, this is another page in my notebook, this is another page, this is another page, this is another page, and then this is finally another page that I haven't gotten onto the back side yet. But I'm taking a lot of notes all the time. Like, that's... Everyone's been saying break, 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 and it's like, well, I'm not on a break. I'm just on a break from not being on camera as often, but now I'm over here crunching numbers and getting stats and getting more education on all these different moving variables. Because that's another thing, too. As a forecaster, you need to know how to course correct and how to, demonstrate a little bit of resiliency. And while we're on a break, with things changing in our overall pattern, I got to dig into the finite details of that, so this way I can fix our forecasts as we get into the busier period of time. Not necessarily, Olivia. To tell you the truth, like, I'll go back to my car analogy. Whenever we have high horsepower builds, we're talking like 5 to 1,000 horsepower vehicles, you can only run it on the track so many times before something breaks and you got to take it into the pits. When you have a more conservative build, like my Evo 10 has 300 plus horsepower, it can still rip. It's still a fun car, but it's not going to explode if I decide to beat on it again and again and again and again and again and again and again. And so that means we'll be able to run it a lot longer on the track than if I had 1,000 horsepower in that bad boy. And the same thing with our Enzo, the same thing with our general weather patterns. The more sharp of an increase, the faster and more stark of a decrease that we'll have. If we can maintain a natural, kind of an elevated period, it'll be a conservative upwards and a conservative downwards. So we actually could be in a neutral to La Nina a little bit longer. Whereas, like we saw with El Nino spiked at the beginning of last hurricane season, really shot up, and then as soon as we got to January, February, March, came down real quick. We were in it for less than a year. So, ...2005 was a monster hurricane season too. Yes, absolutely. Connecticut and Guyana. WC Demerara, Guyana. Oh, yeah, we're going to be watching Guyana for sure. But, Olivia, I hope that answers your question. I don't think we're going to go into an El Nino again very soon. Could see it try to spring back late next year, but that's way too far of a forecast than I would like to dabble into, especially right now. And no, Skittles McDiddles, I don't think they're going to make a Cat 6. It'd be very outlandish to make a Category 6. It's hard enough to get a Category 5, pending, obviously we just had Beryl, but it's difficult enough to maintain and develop a Category 5. I don't think there's any reason to create a Category 6. Thanks for adding your voice to the greater discussion. Also, I believe you were spot on about coastal southeast U.S. Atlantic being a hotspot this summer. Thanks, Josh. I appreciate that. And Ashes, I'm glad that you enjoy the way I explain things. Been working on that for a little while now. But it is 10:02, guys. Happy Friday. I got to start getting ready for work, and then I got to go and shave up and get myself cleaned up for an early rise tomorrow because I have drill this weekend with the Navy. Oh, yeah, we're definitely going to see long tracks like that. We'll definitely see long tracks. The part where I'm hazy is it continuing to Texas or the Gulf Coast. I don't know about that part. I think anything that forms a long track off of Africa and just to the south of the Cabo Verdes, I really think that that's going to have a greater chance of lifting to the north. But for the few of you who watched, please make sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment if you have any questions or comments or concerns. Anything that you may want addressed offline or privately, feel free to reach out to me on my Instagram, my X, or my TikTok. Same username, WXCenter_Nazario, WXCenter Nazario. However you want to reach out to me, you're more than welcome to. And that's it. That's all we wrote, or that's all she wrote. Probably won't see you this weekend. I might pop live on Sunday, possibly. Very possibly, but like I said, I have drill with the Navy this weekend, a lot of things I have to take care of, so with this quiet period, you may not see me here on YouTube. You'll probably catch me doing updates on Instagram and TikTok if you want to. If you can follow me there, feel free to, but probably going to take a break from YouTube for Saturday and Sunday just so I can handle military and personal obligations. And we'll see you back first thing Monday morning. Monday morning is the big day, too. I did tell you guys on our Monday morning live stream, or maybe we'll do a Monday night live stream. I'm not sure, but I told you on July 15th, we're going to put my theories to the test. If we see a greater signal, or at least a more definitive signal, on Monday, July 15th, then we probably have to hold on because we're hitting the money almost on every indication. So if we see something on Monday that's worth talking about, that's going to make the rest of the season very interesting, and I'm going to have to dig in even harder than I already am to get you guys that information. Thanks for being such a wonderful crowd, albeit to see the few of us who joined in today. Please share this information, discuss it, even open mouth or just in passing with coworkers, friends, family alike. Just give them a nudge and say, hey, I watched this morning, and this is what we should probably be watching for as we go through August, September, and October, especially for our Caribbean folks and our Gulf Coast and United States coastal locations. Have a wonderful rest of your Friday. I hope everything is great for you guys, wherever it is you may reside, and we'll talk to you again very soon. Have a great weekend if I don't get to see you, but until next time, this is Weather Center Nazario, signing out.